Hello, end users, and welcome to the End User Report, the weekly cast that has one speed, one gear, go. We are your hosts. I'm Clarence.
And I'm Jamal. Magical.
Magical, yeah, magical things happening
With
this
tiger's
week.
blood.
Wow, okay, you're going all sheen on me. All right. Today's podcast, we want to know what you think, and we're going to discuss the iPad 2. But let's go ahead. We're going to start the show off like we normally do. Actually going to go back and take a look at last episode. We did get a response. A Chronicles, your homeboy.
That's my man.
Last episode we talked about the Sony Ericsson Xperia Play. Again, we said that rolls right off the tongue. A Chronicles writes, the Sony Ericsson Xperia Play is a good smartphone, but is just that. A gaming phone, not much there. I mean, it's really a gimmick at this point. It's not even a truly up-to-date phone. But like I said, it's a good phone. I'm waiting for the NGP. My prediction for the Xperia Play, $249.99 with the 2-year contract. So Jamal, what do you think about that?
I agree. I think my boy is right on that point. I would hold off on the NGP. If you want a digital handheld device that is a gaming device, that's the thing for you. As for the Xperia Play, it's gimmicky. That's nice. You can go to your friends, hey, look at me, I'm playing FIFA 2010. First of all, who would even want to play FIFA 2010? But that got to the point of, it's just a phone. Hopefully it makes phone calls and you can play video games on it. 50 titles doesn't match up with your PSP Go titles, so you have to purchase them all over again. That's the problem I really have with it.
Well, the shortcomings aside, at the end of the day, it is a phone.
Yeah.
As far as it being a gimmick, it's not really a bad thing. I mean, just because it's got its own controller and just because the specs aren't as impressive as maybe the HTC Thunderbolt or the Droid Bionic or some of the other smartphones that are out there doesn't make it bad. If that was the case, no one would own a Wii. I mean, the Wii isn't the most technically advanced system out there, and I could argue that the motion control system is a gimmick, but it sold a lot of units. So just the fact that it's a gimmick doesn't make it bad. So
I think it makes it bad because of the fact that Sony is using this as an experiment for their Sony Plays logo, so that you can put the Sony Plays on other, phones. So I'm sorry, but if I'm a consumer, I feel like I'm being played in a way, because I think they're just using that phone as an experiment to see how successful this trademark Sony Play is going to work on other phones.
all right. But let's get into the reason why we're here today. This week, Apple announced the iPad 2. Jamal, I believe you have the stats on this.
Yes. Pretty much some of the stats are pretty much the same from last. Couple of things that do jump out at me is it has the A5 dual-core processor. It's 1/3 thinner than the original iPad, which I think is pretty neat. So, how the iPad had like that really weird like bump or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of sliced that out, and so it made it a lot thinner. And of course, doing that also made the iPad about lighter too. I think it's 1.3 pounds as opposed to the 1.5 pounds. Still, it's still a rather heavy device, especially if you're holding it for long periods of time. Just try to hold a tennis ball in your hand for long periods of time, and you'll see. But that's another story. Beautiful thing: front-facing camera and the rear-facing camera. The front-facing camera is going to be used most likely for FaceTime. That's the big thing. And the rear-facing camera, which is pretty cool, it'll allow you to do 720p movies. The same 10.1-inch screen, and it's incorporating a gyroscopic type of technology into it. The really thing that I like, HDMI out. Wow. really awesome. I think that's what was missing in the first iPad was the fact that you had this entertainment tablet. I wouldn't even call it a PC because it wasn't as powerful as a PC, but you had this entertainment device, but you couldn't port it out to a larger screen, which I think the introduction of HDMI out on this particular iPad 2 is a great inclusion. 9 times the graphics because of the processor. One thing, with all of this, it has a 10-hour battery life still, which they say it's 10 hours. We'll see. We'll have to actually, there's always the factory or the manufacturer telling you the battery life and the actual battery life. I'm sure folks like Engadget or somebody will post the actual real battery life.
It also reminds me of the
test.
Kindle when they say, yeah, your battery lasts like 30 days or something.
Yeah.
It's kind of like listings in the NBA. They list Charles Barkley at 6'10", and he's more like 6'5".
6'5", yeah. He's Barkley. Another thing that I thought was pretty cool is with the HDMI out, when you connect the iPad 2 to it up to the screen, it has something called mirroring. So when you have the iPad and you put it into landscape mode, the video on your TV will also shift to landscape mode, and if you threw it to portrait mode, the video will also shift to portrait mode, which I thought that was pretty neat concept there. Any other things?
A couple things to add to the stats. This is running iOS 4.3. Also, there's actually 3 storage capacities to this: 16, 32, and 64 gigabytes. Wi-Fi only pricing is $499, $599, and $699 respectively, with your 3G versions being $629, $729, and $829 respectively. The iPad 2 will ship on March 11th. The 3G versions will be available on both AT&T and Verizon. So based on so far what we know as far as the iPad 2 go, what are your overall thoughts as far as that goes?
As I mentioned to you earlier, the only thing missing from the iPad 2 is the Buy Now button at the Apple Store. That was pretty corny, wasn't it?
That was pretty corny.
I was very hesitant on the first Apple iPad. I thought it was a neat device. I know Steve Jobs called it magical. I didn't really consider it to be a magical device. I just oh, that was nice. It's neat. It's a nice entertainment. I thought it was a little expensive for it. But now when I look at it, the price was all right, because if you look at the Motorola Zoom or the Samsung Galaxy 10.1, which they haven't announced the price because they don't even know what to do with the pricing now, because the 8.9-inch Samsung without the 2-year contract is what, $900? Around $900. That's expensive. That's more than.
Well, you got to consider taxes and.
Yeah, that's more than an iPad 2, which you can get for $499. So I mean, I guess Steve was kind of right on. It was competitively priced, because now if you look at all of the tablets coming out, they're having trouble really keeping up with the pricing that the iPad 2 is going to be. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out. Another thing too is, again, I love competition, but man, Motorola, Samsung, HP, RIM, guys got to get it together. It's no longer a catch-up game anymore. I mean, the iPad 2 comes out, it's not a catch-up game, guys. It's a game of, oh well, we're in the dust of iPad now. I don't know. That's crazy.
Well, I mean, this is Apple's second time around, whereas Motorola, it's their first time through.
But this is what I'm saying. The iPad's been around. They already have a second vision of their device, and we're still waiting for the vaporware of the HP touchpad, the RIM playbook. I know they sound great on paper, but to me, and we've had this discussion, that if it's not in our hands, it's not sold on the shelves, it's vaporware. And that's what we see right now. The only thing that's not vaporware is the Motorola Zoom.
And the crazy thing is, the original iPad has been out less than a year, and I think that maybe our stat girl can confirm this, but I believe April 3rd, 2010 is when the original iPad came out, so it's actually been less than a year, and everyone else seems to be kind of just waking up and saying, tablets might be something to get into. But overall, while not all the specs on the iPad 2 don't really wow me, specifically the cameras and the amount of RAM, presumably, which they're thinking is right around 512. But even with that considered, I think that the iPad 2 is going to be the most popular tablet of 2011. The iPad 2 has some advantages over its competitors. The first one, and we obviously talked about it, is apps. And the number of apps that are designed for it are something in the neighborhood of 65,000 apps, whereas the competition isn't even close. So whether it's work or play, there's a lot of things that you can do with the iPad 2. iPad 2 can do everything for you except make a beer run.
They'll find something out. There'll probably be an app for that.
If they do find an app for that, I'm getting two.
That would be a great app, beer run.
Also, secondly, the OS, which iOS 4 has proven itself as a stable operating system. It's sexy, it's easy to use, and it is very responsive. Now, the iPad 2 does come out with 4.3, which promises faster browsing, AirPlay enhancement, and also improved file sharing. So basically, they've taken the OS and made it better. And lastly, there's 6 different versions of this thing. So one of the things that both me and Jamal are big on is choice, and Apple, as far as the iPad 2, is offering users a lot of choice.
Yeah, I mean, just the limited one, which is with the 16 gigs with the Wi-Fi only, what was that, $4.99?
I believe, yep, $4.99.
I mean, that's a pretty darn good price, especially if you're looking at an entertainment device. If you didn't want to spend that kind of money, then I would look. We've always agreed on this. The color is probably the next alternative to a device like an iPad. If you just want to read books, surf the web, but this iPad 2 the processor is a lot faster. Play games on it. It has all of the traditional Apple software, GarageBand, Photo Booth, and FaceTime. So I think in this case it's probably a win-win. I mean, I think I'm probably going to get this device.
Look at you!
I know.
Supporting Steve Jobs.
I'm not an Apple dude, man. This one is really getting me excited. I don't know why, because they just hit it. I mean, when they incorporated a dual processor, now you have a processor that's basically computer speeds, and they incorporated the HDMI out. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me.
Wow. See, I knew. When I woke up this morning, I sensed a disturbance in the force.
There's a disturbance. I'm not a big Apple guy.
Jamal's supporting Apple.
Trust me, I'm not a big Apple guy.
Mark this day down on the calendar, because this will probably never happen again.
This is crazy. And it's probably one of the only Apple device I'll probably ever buy. Seriously.
Might be the only Apple device you ever need, for honestly.
Yeah,
but any word on the release date of the original?
You were right. The original was released, according to Wikipedia, in April of 2010. Sold 3 million devices
on that
in
day
80
alone.
days.
In 80 days.
You see, I was right out of the money. And you know why that is, Jamal?
Because we have Stats Girl.
It's because I am not bipolar. I am bi-winning. That's what we're talking about.
There's also some cool stuff, though, about furthering, because I'm on Wikipedia now. Apparently, the band The Gorillaz has shot an entire music video using the new iPad 2.
That's what I'm talking about.
720p. You can't beat that, man.
Can't beat that. But I did have a couple questions I did want to ask you, because I wanted to get your opinion on these. Is there anything that surprised you about the iPad 2?
I thought the pricing did. I really thought that they were going to jump up in price. The fact that they maintained the price was kind of a shock to me. I didn't think that They bring a dual core processor with HDMI out, and then say, "Hey, $499 is the starting price of this device." I would have been kind of more been like, "Oh, $1,100 would have been the starting price." I'd have been like, "Okay, that's typical Apple, $1,100 to play with the device. That's fine." But the fact that they kept it at $499, it really probably says something, which probably means they probably have a lot more Chinese people enslaved in some cave somewhere making these devices.
No, I'm not touching that one. Not even touching it. I knew there was a shot coming at some point in the show.
Make those iPads now!
The one thing that kind of took me by surprise and is not as positive as you're saying there, I'm kind of surprised that there's no 4G connectivity. And that's one thing that I kind of thought would be a foregone conclusion, considering the two carriers that it's coming out with are AT&T and Verizon. The two carriers that every chance they get, they're slapping you in the face with their 4G commercials. I mean, every 10 minutes I'm seeing a commercial where, I'm seeing a Verizon commercial where lightning is striking a tree or hitting a cow or something ridiculous like that. So, look at that.
Snooky snacks, girl. I think you're right. That is a drawback. But to me, it's not a drawback. I tell you why. Because most of the times I probably would have used this device at home, where I have wireless at home. But I know there are people who travel with this device. Matter of fact, I was at a conference, and one of the people I was sitting next to had the iPad out, and she was typing away on it, and I was like, whatever.
Wow, you're making fun of him after just saying you would get this. Contradicting yourself there.
Who brings an iPad to a conference? Why? Just to show off, oh, look at me, I have an iPad.
You would so do that. I don't even want to hear that. But I wanted to ask you this next question, because if you watched any of the announcements, Steve Jobs, another one of your homeboys, took some shots at the Motorola Zoom. Found that a little surprising. But how do you feel the iPad 2 stacks up against the Zoom?
The Zoom has, in my opinion, better internals. That's how I feel, and I even think it has even a better screen. The problem with the Zoom is, we talked about the App Store, whether what apps are going to be supported. I know it's got the Android market on it, but how is Motorola? All right, here's the real truth. The problem with the Zoom is that it's made by Motorola. That is the bottom line. I'm sorry. Motorola doesn't. The thing about Motorola, they don't have any love for the devices. They're just like, hey, here's a device, and you just throw it out in the market, and then if it does well, okay. If it doesn't do well, then we'll just throw another device. They don't care. Apple, I can say it, but their life depends on this device being successful. So they go out there and they'll try to market it. Have you seen any marketing for the Zoom?
I've seen exactly 2 commercials.
Yeah,
the Super
2
Bowl
commercials.
and
I've
one
already
other one.
seen like 3 commercials on YouTube for the freaking Apple iPad 2, and it hasn't even come out yet, folks. That's what I'm talking about. There's no love. Motorola has no love for their devices, and then of course Google. They have the Android on their device. And the thing about Google is, and I talked about this last time, is that they don't care whether the Zoom is successful or not. All they care is that they get the marketing share of the advertisements. And if the Zoom fails, oh well, we'll throw it on another device, like the Thunderbolt, or we'll throw it on the touchpad when it comes out, and it's like, for them, they just throw stuff out and hope it sticks on a device that's successful. But I mean, pound for pound, if you're matching the iPad up with the Zoom wins in terms of pure hardware.
I have to agree. The Zoom does have the advantage on the hardware side, but Apple's got apps, and you can have a nice piece of hardware, but you need software to run on it.
Yep.
So even though the iPad 2 isn't quite the beast that the Zoom is, the iPad 2 has a lot more going for it. Also, there's a lot more options. As really stated, there's 6 versions, and I believe 5 of those versions are actually cheaper than the Zoom is.
Yeah.
Also, the Zoom is running, as you said, Android 3.0, codenamed Honeycomb, but hasn't been out long enough to really prove itself. We don't really know the shortcomings or any kind of issues that you're going to run into. Now, it does have the Android market, but a lot of the Android market isn't tailor-made for tablets, and we saw the kind of issues that people ran into with the Galaxy S tab. So, yeah, I think the Zoom has some catching up to do in that respect. The one thing, a couple of things that the Zoom has going for it, it's got better cameras, yeah, and it's got more RAM. I mean, it is rocking a gig, and that's presumably. And the 4G connectivity, but even that's a little touchy considering if you have a Zoom, you're actually going to have to ship your Zoom back, wait 2 weeks for it to come back to you, so that is a bit of an inconvenience. So overall, right now, iPad 2 is the better device. The Zoom, the 4G thing, like I said, inconvenient.
Yeah.
But right now they're both 3G, so right now they're on kind of even playing fields as far as speed goes. But time will tell.
Yep. Time will tell.
And now for the final question that I have for you today, do you think it's worth someone trading in their old iPad to get an iPad 2?
Yeah, and this is why, because Apple said, you know what, if you trade your old iPad in, we'll give you $100 towards the purchase of a new one. And I thought that's rather nice, deal. I personally would rather say, hey, here's $200 towards the purchase of the new iPad 2. But $100 is not bad, because then the device becomes $399 instead of $499. I feel sorry for those who bought an iPad last month, but
they can trade it in. So
yeah, they can trade it in.
Again, I have to agree with you. The one thing that we said about the original iPad, it was a nice device, but it was rather limited. I think if someone's out there considering this, you do have a couple options, not just Apple, but I believe Best Buy has a buyback program. There's other sites out there, I believe Gazelle, Nextworth, Cash for iPads, and eBay are all offering different pricing. I'm hearing anything from $580 to $313 to $100 on some of the other sites. So yeah, I definitely think that if you have an iPad, especially if you're a gadget guy and you ran out and you bought this thing on April 3rd last year, I definitely think it's worth your time and money to upgrade and get the newest version.
You might want to even look at I don't know, for me, I like the iPad too, but boy, if you've been wanting the iPad, now is probably the best time to purchase one. Go to Craigslist, eBay.
Well, not only
Probably
that,
guys are
Apple's
selling
going to
them.
be dropping the prices of the original iPad once
Yeah.
the iPad 2 launches. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like a win all the way around as far as the iPad 2 concerned.
I mean, if you don't care about HDMI out or front-facing camera or a dual processor, I would definitely. I heard rumors, at least in the forums, about people selling the iPads for $298. That's not a bad deal,
Not a bad deal at all. But you've heard our opinions. We'd like to know what you think. So you can make your opinion known by voting. We actually have a poll up on the official Facebook page. And this week's poll question, the iPad 2 will be the best-selling tablet of 2011. Yes, no, or it's too early to tell. You can actually vote by going, again, to the official Facebook page and going to the section that says polls. You can also click the link in the post bulletin section on our YouTube channel.
Wait, you can't call it a tablet because Apple calls it a post-PC consumer device.
Yeah, whatever, dude. It's a tablet, okay?
Because I'm magical.
But let's move on to the last segment of the show. This week we're going to show some love. So, Jamal, who are you shouting out this week?
Shouting out? Man, you put me on the spot, haven't you? Okay. I'm shouting out to the Nook Color because I've been looking for an ebook reader, and it's come down to two, the Kindle DX and the Nook Color, and the Nook Color just outweighs in terms of the options that you can get for it, and the fact that Barnes and Noble, even though they know people are hacking their Nooks, they're not breaking them intentionally. In other words, they know that people are hacking their Nooks to get Android on the Nook, and they're not intentionally doing updates to stop people from doing it. And I think hats off to Barnes and Noble for that. I don't know how long it'll last, but hey, I guess they figure, hey, if people are buying a Nook Color, and then hey, good for them. And I'd like to give love also, since we're talking about the Nook, to Barnes and Nobles. And the reason why Barnes and Nobles, because if you go to Barnes and Nobles and you pretend to look at the Nook, they'll give you free coffee, literally. Lady came up to me saying, "Here's a receipt for free coffee." I was like, "Heck yeah! I'm coming back tomorrow and gonna browse the Nook." Get
Heck, I bought a Nook. I ain't getting no coffee. I bought a Nook Color. Where's my coffee?
And on top of that, the cool thing also with Barnes and Noble is that if you already have a Nook and you're bringing the Nook into the store, they allow you to actually read books for free on their wireless system. So, I mean,
Nothing wrong with that.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, way to keep bookstores relevant these days.
I know, really. Other than the coffee.
That's true.
And what about you? What are you showing love for?
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna show love for Epic Games. Gears of War 3 beta is out. You can play it. Go online, and they actually have an area where you can actually vote on the stages that you want to see in the game. So your play and your opinions actually matter. I'm also going to show love to our homeboy of the week, Charlie Sheen.
Charlie!
If he's proven one thing this week, crazy sells. Okay? And the man joined Twitter and got, 1 million followers in 25 hours? Not to mention he's given us years of entertainment,
Hey,
with his Adonis jeans and tiger blood. Wonderful, as Jamal said, magic.
Who doesn't want to party with porn stars and have a drug binge?
Not to mention, he lives with 2 girlfriends that he calls the goddesses.
Nice.
I mean,
Charlie Sheen,
what red-blooded American male would want that?
for reals.
Currently, let's see, as of Tuesday afternoon on his Twitter account, Sheen had amassed more than 910,000 followers, landing his user account as the fastest growing the website has ever had. Now, mind you, it's probably gone up because this article from the LA Times is dated March 3rd.
Wow. So
Doing it big.
Is that a world's record for Twitter?
Thursday morning, he actually hit the Guinness Book of World Records, according to them, when he was the fastest to ever hit 1 million followers, which he did in 25 hours and 17 minutes.
You know what? I'm going to say this. The makers of 2.5 Men, right now, I think you should get on your knees and thank Charlie Sheen, because he's bringing so much publicity to your show right now. Even though you've canceled it, he's bringing so much attention to himself and the battle that he's having with you guys that your ratings can go nowhere but up right now if you bring the show back. I think you should thank Charlie Sheen.
That is the best thing that Charlie Sheen has ever done for himself. Good job, dude.
Even better than Hot Shots Part 2.
For real.
But that wraps it up for us here at the End User Report. Again, you can always follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And don't forget to comment and subscribe on YouTube.
Peace.